Is your business protected against the threat of malicious litigation and frivolous lawsuits? Are you sinking company profits into marketing campaigns that do nothing to contribute to the growth of your business? Bottled Business Sense provides practical business perspectives that uniquely emphasize both legal and media marketing strategies to protect and ensure the longevity of your business. Now, whether you're trying to provide a startup business with some level of stability or an established business with foolproof asset and estate protection, or simply attempting to get a better return for your business marketing dollars, Bill Bernard and Rick Moscoso will expose potential pitfalls to ensure the security and growth of your business, free from unwanted expense and the threat of litigation. You'll learn how to implement marketing and protection tools equal to those used by today's most successful corporations. Let's join Bill and Rick for today's Bottled Business Sense show.
All right. Well, welcome everybody. Good morning. I am here with my co-host Bill Bernard. I am Rick Moscoso, and we're happy to be here today. We have a lot of information to share with you, and welcome, Bill.
Thank you, Rick. Thank you. It's great to be here with everyone. Looking forward to today's show. Hope everyone is starting their morning off with a good hot cup of coffee and Bottled Business Sense show.
All right. Well, Bill, you have a very interesting topic that we're going to be speaking about today. It actually dovetails off your last topic, talking about enticizing. Right?
Yes. Yeah, Rick. We talked last time, at least the show before last, about why people should have an entity, what exactly is an entity. And I think we talked a little bit about the entities that I didn't prefer as well, which would be sole proprietorships, which and general partnerships, which I really don't consider entities at all. But we did speak a little bit about limited partnership. There, of course, you're filing a certificate of partnership with the Secretary of State. You have a passive partner who basically has no liability, and then you have a general partner who has all personal liability for whatever he does in the partnership. Mm-hmm. So I think today we're going to talk about the business entities that I think do benefit the small business owner, and I think the more popular ones obviously would be the LLC and the S Corporation.
Excellent. Well, why don't we get started then, Bill?
All right, let's talk a little bit about some of the things that the S Corporation and the limited liability have in common, and then as we move forward, I think we'll be able to distinguish them a little bit. Obviously, we talked the show before last about the fact that there's no personal liability attached to these companies if you run them right. The idea being that there is liability only to the limitation of the investment in the company that the individual makes. So that's the first and foremost thing that we want to point out that are similar between both of them. And then I think we want to talk a little bit about some taxation issues, which are important for both of these entities.
Okay.
Now, I don't want to make this a tax show because I'm not an accountant, but you have to be familiar with some of these things if you're going to run a company. And of course, if you have your attorney and your accountant on board, that's going to be the two premier people that you need, along with your marketing guru.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. All right. Let's get going.
All right. So let's talk about pass-through taxation a little bit. Both of these structures, LLCs and S corporations, allow for pass-through income. In other words, you are taxed on the income or the profits from your company on your individual tax return. It's not something that you have to file a separate tax return for like you would with a C corporation. C corporation, the corporation itself is taxed based on a return it files, and then, of course, shareholders, whatever profit they make, they pay taxes on their individual returns. Here you have a pass-through. Both of these entities are pass-through taxation entities, is how they're referred to. Okay. Flexibility, well, if we're talking about the flexibility of one of these entities, we're really talking about an LLC. First and foremost, I think you can allocate profits despite your ownership interest in an LLC, which is something that you normally don't do in an S corp. Here's what I mean by that, Rick. Okay. If you are in an S corporation and you're a shareholder in that S corporation, you own a percentage of the company, and you're going to be taxed on that percentage of ownership. If you are in an LLC, you can be taxed on the amount of profits that you take from the company. So in other words, if you and I are in an LLC and we're members of an LLC, and one year you happen to bring in more business than I do, I can say, okay, Rick, you take 60% or 70% of the profits, I'll take 40% or 30%, whatever we decide on. And ultimately, that's what we're going to be taxed on, as opposed to an S Corp, where we're going to be taxed on the percentage of ownership that we have in that company, despite the fact that you may have brought in more business than I did for that particular year.
So in that example that you just spoke about, in an LLC, let's say somebody was sick. One of the partners was sick.
Yep.
How do you determine that, and how do you, I guess, formalize that part of the agreement?
Well, that's a good question, and you know, I've recommended for years that people have operating agreements. You have to have an operating agreement that spells out all of the rights of the individual members in an LLC. In an S corporation, of course, you have bylaws and articles of incorporation. But the bottom line is you need to have something written down. Now, if you don't, doesn't mean you can't try to run the company that way, but you're basically operating on a handshake. And you're in business with somebody, and the best of friendships or relationships can go sour when a bad business deal comes down the pike.
Yeah. Tell me a little bit more of, let's say in a case where, I guess like you, as a sole provider in your legal business,
Mm-hmm.
Which one would make more sense for you?
Well, I don't know. This is necessarily always one that makes more sense. It's one that's legally available. Lawyers can't have limited liability companies. I can't establish an LLC because of my profession. I can't claim that I'm going to limit my liability. Now, there are ways to limit your liability, if you will, without making it a part of your company structure. So I'm forced to pick some other entity other than a limited liability company, which by its name says, hey, wait a minute, I'm a lawyer, but you know what? Under certain circumstances, I'm not responsible for what I do.
So are there other businesses that that cannot take advantage of an LLC?
There are businesses. There are certain businesses that cannot. But the real key is not to understand so much what businesses can't become an LLC, but rather what is available for businesses that deal with professionals who need to have professional liability insurance. For example, doctors, lawyers, accountants, engineers. They're going to usually choose an S corporation or a professional corporation. I chose an S corporation. Why? Because an S corporation gives me multiple advantages and gives me the same protection that a limited liability company would provide me.
Okay, so in your case, then, an S corporation gives you more flexibility. In other words, right, to do.
Well,
for
it
growth.
does give me some flexibility. Again, getting back to some taxation issues, let me explain. I have the flexibility of protection from the standpoint of being protected from anything that comes down the pike that's nasty or malicious or in any way, shape, or form not profitable, if you will. My personal assets can't be reached, but remember that when you take profits, when you're taxed, generally you're going to be taxed on what? Your FICA, right, which is Medicare, Social Security, right? Mm-hmm. And then you're going to pay income tax on your profits. In an S corporation, you have the ability to pay yourself a salary and take passive distributions. Here's what I mean. Each month, I may decide to take a distribution of income, profit from my company. I'm going to be taxed at the end of the year on whatever distributions I take on a monthly basis or bi-monthly basis or whatever it is I decide to do. But when I take my salary, and it has to be a reasonable salary, when I take my salary, my wages, if you will, I'm going to be taxed on FICA. I'm going to be taxed on Social Security and Medicare. So you're able to take a reasonable salary and limit your taxation on Medicare and Social Security and take passive distributions during the course of the year from the profits of your company, ultimately on which you'll pay income tax at the end of the year. So it allows you to distribute your income in a basis that benefits you both from an economical standpoint in terms of the money you need each month, and also from a tax standpoint. In an LLC, you can't do that.
Right. So it's really important then to make sure that you're on the same page with your accountant to really, if you're first setting this up, to really determine which one is of benefit to you, right?
No question about it. No question about it. I always advise people to go see an accountant. I'm here to help you with the structure, make sure your structure is put together correctly and functions correctly after it's put together. And while I can talk about some general taxation principles, which I'm doing today to point out some of the similarities and differences between the two most popular entities, you always should see an accountant.
Right.
Always.
Right. So in the case of an S corp, like you're set up,
right?
If you were to bring on a partner or another attorney to grow your business a little bit more,
a shareholder.
A shareholder.
It's referred to as a shareholder.
Okay.
And it's a good point. When we're talking about partnerships, you have partners. When we talk about S corporations or C corporations, we're talking about shareholders with freely transferable shares, generally speaking. And in LLCs, we're talking about members. So you're a member of an LLC, you're a shareholder of an S corp, you're a shareholder of a C corp. Members in an LLC do not generally have freely transferable shares. In other words, the operating agreement will spell out how those shares are to be transferred upon death or upon wanting to leave the LLC. Okay, so that's an important distinction. But the LLC is chosen by a lot of people because it does provide, one, the liability protection we spoke of at the top of the show, and it also allows more ease of operation. I'm fussy about keeping books. I advise everybody to do it, whether they are required to or not. Document everything you do in your company all the time. But with an S corporation, you have to have your annual meetings. You have to keep minutes. You have to indicate who's being paid what. With an LLC, it's not as structured as an S corporation, so generally sometimes people will pick that because it's less expensive to set up and it's less expensive to maintain. So LLCs are very popular today for those reasons.
Right. And so from what I'm hearing and what I understand, so for an LLC, you don't have to file the letters of incorporation. You can.
There are none. There are no articles of incorporation. There are what's called articles of organization, which you do have to file with the state.
And what's the difference?
Well, articles of organization simply apply to an LLC. You're organizing a limited liability company, where with an S corporation, you are organizing a corporation. Essentially, when push comes to shove, the meat of it is not that different. But you're not structured with an LLC as you move forward in terms of making sure that all of the I's, well, I shouldn't say that, all of your I's should be dotted and all of your T's crossed. But there are certain formalities that would take up more time than we have on our show today that would lead someone to maybe say, okay, an S corp's not really what I need. I'll go with the LLC. Okay. So there are business concerns that you may have in terms of choosing the entity. Who you are may decide what entity you can choose. How much money you have may decide what entity you want to choose. You may want to decide to have an S corporation if you see yourself bringing other shareholders into the business at some point in time. Maybe you have an LLC that's a sole member LLC or a dual member LLC, or maybe 3 or 4 people, and maybe when you want to limit it to a smaller company with the same liability protection, so you decide not to choose an S corp. This is why it's important to give generalities on this show only, because you have to sit down with your lawyer and discuss all the particularities of your business in order to be fully educated on what entity you want to choose.
Right. So in addition to this business, these business entities that you help people form, why don't you just take a minute and share what other areas that you help service? Tell us a little bit about WFBLC and what you do as far as helping families and estate planning and that sort of thing.
Yeah, we also do. We have a model that establishes and protects businesses, and that's much of what we're discussing now. we carry through to continue to protect the business by working in the employment field. That is, I have a large, very extensive background in employment law, so I'm able to help people make sure that they comply with the law, both in terms of promoting the employer-employee relationship, should you have employees. And then on the back end, it never fails that once all of that is established, someone will come to me and say, well, now what about our personal assets? What do we want to do with those? How do we keep our personal assets private? How do we avoid probate court and all the expense that comes with it for our families when we pass? Well, we have a large estate planning division, and that estate planning division helps you avoid probate by establishing in some type of a living trust that's going to benefit you. Now, there are certain trusts that will also protect your assets. But again, that's going to be a topic for another show. So call us, give us a call at 949-413-6535, and we're happy to go all through all of that stuff with you.
Okay, all right, that's great, Bill. Let's get back to talking a little bit more about LLCs and S corps. You mentioned before that as an S corp, you can you can grow in the form of providing shares to other shareholders that would come and join your group, right?
And you are limited. There are some specific requirements for S corps. You have to be a U.S. citizen, and you are limited to 100 shareholders. So that's not the case, of course, with a C corporation. And we haven't talked about that, but we probably haven't touched on that too much because it's not necessarily for the small business owner. I guess it ultimately depends on how you define the word small. If you're small and you want to eventually get bigger and bigger and bigger, a C corp might be more attractive for you for a number of different reasons.
Right. So in the case of, let's go back to the shareholders. So in the case of an LLC. How do you structure that? Like, let's say I have a partner and we have an LLC, and we have an operating agreement, and now maybe I'm not interested in doing business with him anymore, or I want to retire, or I'm transferring my interest to somebody else. How would we do that?
That's all provided for within the operating agreement. There'll be a section within the agreement that talks about the transferability of units. In an LLC, you don't have shares because, again, you're not a shareholder like in a corporation. You have units. And your members. So easy way to think about it is LLC, you're a member and you own units. S corp, you're a shareholder and you own shares.
I see.
So you would have a provision in the agreement that talks about how shares are to be transferred. And normally with an LLC, it's the person who wants to leave will give the other LLC members a right of first refusal, right to purchase the shares, and will need unanimous approval by the remaining members to allow this individual to transfer his shares to someone else. That's what I recommend, because when you get into business with somebody in an LLC, you don't want to be doing business with somebody ultimately that you never wanted to start doing business with in the first place.
Good point.
So, and that's a distinction between an LLC and why, again, some people choose an LLC, because with an S corporation, the more shareholders you have, you got to remember, many times you have freely transferable shares. So if I want to sell my shares in an S corporation to somebody else, I can. Unless somebody has taken the opportunity to try to prevent that in some way within the documentation file with the state when you form the S corp. But certainly with a C corp, when you're on a larger scale like that, we've all seen people sell shares on the stock market. It's going to have that ability to have freely transferable shares, unlike an LLC.
Now that talking about a C corp, now that's probably another show in itself. But do you want to touch a little bit on
that? Let's talk about it, because you never know. Small business owners may eventually get there and become larger business owners, or they may want a C corporation, not necessarily because they want to grow to a large extent. They may have what's called a closed corporation, which is a very small corporation that can be formed in a manner that is in fact a C corporation. A closed corporation simply means it's a smaller group of individuals that have equal power within the corporation. But the real reason you would want to choose a C Corp, a couple of them actually, it's got more marketability power, I would think. When you're a C corporation, you're getting to the point where you're generally well known. When you first want to establish it, you have visions of being generally well known in the future. C corps have a lot of marketability to them because they can invite people in as investors to buy shares in the company, and you're going to get money in that way to grow your company.
So there's so you almost get brand recognition from being a C corp.
In a C corp, eventually you would, yes, if all things go as you would hope. You also have, of course, the protection that we've talked about, and you have the freely transferable shares, as we mentioned. But you also have to remember you have double taxation here. So you're a shareholder. Whatever profits you take from the company, you're going to be taxed on. But the corporation itself will be taxed on its profits. So there's a double taxation standard there, if you will. Yeah. It just depends on what you want to give up, Rick, and what you're looking for. If you're looking for investors down the line, if you're looking to grow, a C Corp can be attractive because the more people you have, the more people there are to absorb whatever happens along the way. But again, the key ingredient to all three of these entities, C Corp, S Corp, LLC, is that you're going to have protection that's limited to the investment in the company and not with respect to your personal assets.
Okay. Well, we have talked a lot about the three different entities that could or could not, be advantageous to an individual. I think as a small business owner, obviously the S Corp and the LLC is something that's probably more practical. As the either starting out or organizing. Bill, we've got a few minutes here left. You want to do a little recap because there's a lot of information here, and in a half an hour we can't possibly squeeze all this information in here.
This is really meant to give somebody a flavor, maybe to put it bluntly, put a carrot out there, let them taste a little bit, and say, okay, this is important enough for me to investigate. I need to call a lawyer. I need to call an accountant and decide which entity is best for me. I want to emphasize that emphatically. There's no fix here, short fix. You have to decide what entity is best for you after you consult with a professional. But the keys are that these entities provide liability protection from having your personal assets infringed upon, and they provide distinct tax benefits other than the C Corp. The tax benefits are in the S Corp and the LLC. The LLC being something that certain professionals can't participate in because of the recognition that it's a limited liability issue. There's other ways to go, however, to limit your liability. We haven't had a chance to talk about professional corporations. Maybe we'll get to that in another show. Those are normally corporations that only doctors, lawyers, accountants, architects, engineers are allowed to form. So really what you want to do is discuss this with your accountant and your lawyer, and then sit down and make sure that your personal assets are protected, and make sure you have somebody who can talk you through the keeping of the necessary books that are required to maintain your company, because just because you get an entity doesn't mean you're going to keep it if you don't follow the rules.
Right. That's a good point.
So I think with our remaining time, Rick, maybe what we want to do is recap how people can get a hold of us again, and what they can do to have access to our program.
Okay, excellent. Why don't we just start off? How to get a hold of us is the best way. I know there's going to be a lot of questions after people view this show and be interested to get a little bit more detailed from you, Bill. What's the best way for viewers and listeners to get a hold of you?
Well, WFB Legal Consulting Incorporated is, of course, on Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn, and a number of other social media sites as well. But WFBLegalConsulting.com is the easiest way to get a hold of me. ProtectYourEstate365.com is the Estate Planning Division, and Business Asset Protection 365.com is the Business Asset Protection Division. And then, of course, the universal site WFBLC that I mentioned. 949-698-6222 or 949-413-6535 would be my phone numbers.
Excellent. And below this video here that you will be able to see on our website, we'll also have an audio download of this complete show.
Right.
So you can go back and re-listen to some of these great tips that Bill had to share with us. And if you do have questions that you want to feed into Bill, you can contact us directly at bottlebusinesssenseshow@gmail.com. In fact, if you'd like to be a guest on the show, go ahead and contact us there, and we'd love to take a look and see what.
Yes, we can send you. We can send you a short form to fill out to see if there's something that would be worth your while, and we can certainly go from there. And also, we can have questions submitted to us as well for purposes of addressing those on the show. Rick, why don't you tell us a little bit about what next week's show is going to be about?
Well, next week's show, we're going to talk. We're going to continue my first segment on the basics of video marketing, and we're going to talk a little bit more about. Okay, now you have the equipment. You're all set up to do broadcast your first video or first show, whatever it is you're doing. Now, what is it I'm going to say? All right, How do I go about formulating a short script to really connect with the viewer and make it most impactful, so you're providing good value to them? So really what we're going to talk about is the why, the how, and the what of scripting, or scripting for your topic that you want to talk about.
I love that part because I remember when we went through that process for the videos that we did for my company. I'm looking forward to that. So hopefully everyone will be here next week, Tuesday, 10 a.m., on Blog Talk Radio or on our website, which is bottlebusinesssenseshow.com. And I believe, Rick, there's a little icon there that they can click on to listen and to watch the show, right?
Yes, absolutely. You'll be able to see the video broadcast as well as the audio broadcast as well. You can even download that onto your mobile device. You can also find us on Facebook and LinkedIn at Bottle Business Sense Show. And then find us on Twitter at BB Sense Show on Twitter. So if you have any comments or questions, you can tweet into the show, and we'll be happy to address those as they come in.
And there's a lot of information we've given out on where to contact us. You know, for the person who just loves Google, just get on Google and Google Bottle Business Sense Show, and you'll find us.
Absolutely. Well, Bill, that's. We barely touched on the topic that you had, and folks, you understand that we're here as a resource to kind of, like Bill said, we're here to give you a little bit of information, as much as we can within this half hour. Right. If you have very detailed questions or information or want to learn more about what Bill does. Again, Bill, why don't you just share your contact information for the viewers out there?
Yeah, just give me a call at 949-413-6535 or 949-698-6222, and I'll be happy to help you.
All right, excellent. I'm Rick Moscoso with R2 Visual Studios, one of your co-hosts.
And I'm Bill Bernard at WFP Legal Consulting Incorporated. Signing off, folks. Hope you enjoyed the show. Look forward to seeing you next week.
All right, we'll see you next week, folks.
Bye-bye now.